call the meeting to order. Please let the record show that all board members are present for the Tuesday, March 7, 2017 board study session. At this time, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to have a motion to approve the Tuesday, March 7, 2017 Board of Education study session. So moved. Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charles. So, motion by Alina, second by Charles. At this time, please vote. Can you do one verbal, please?
Aye. Watch this. Well, we can hope for that, but that's what's good. What do you make of that?
Okay, at this time we'll move to our public comments to address agenda items. This is the opportunity for comments from the public regarding items that are listed on our agenda this evening. Mrs. Luton, we do not have. We have no comments, requests to speak on agenda items this evening. So we'll move on to our information reports. What we have on our agenda is information report regarding portrait of a graduate. However, we're going to make one agenda adjustment this evening. We are going to move agenda item 6.01, budget development, same item. We're just going to shift it to the beginning of our meeting. Carolyn Reed has another important event that she will have to leave our meeting to attend. So we've asked her at this time to bring us agenda item 6.01, budget development.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this may very well be the shortest presentation I will ever provide you, or at least that I have ever provided you in my history here. This is an introductory conversation with regard to the budget development process and the journey we will take, beginning with this meeting and moving forward to the culmination of the final budget recommendation and seeking your approval by the end of June. And that will be at our last June meeting. So I'll take you through that process. Our discussion objectives for this evening are very basic: strategic plan alignment, statutory compliance, budget process, review of funds, and the budget presentation schedule. So this is a familiar document for you. It is our strategic plan, and you need to understand that everything we do is continually aligning us to the strategic plan that you worked hard to develop. And every learner, every day is our mission, or our statement there, our mission: preparing all students for tomorrow by engaging relevant and personalized educational experiences. And again, that conversation occurs each day. So I was thinking it's been a while since we've even looked at our commitments and what we believe. I've included that in the report this evening, but again, reminding you that each of the focus areas has resulted in numerous budget conversations with the leaders who are champions for those areas, engaging with other leaders in the system, and that work continues each day. Like strategic plans, budgets are dynamic and ever-changing, and that's our commitment to you as we continue to bring you monthly budget amendments throughout the fiscal year. We continue to realign our allocations based on the prioritization of needs, and that includes a quarterly assessment of our salary and benefits, which represents 80% of our operating budget. This slide provides you with the 5 general categories that are required for statutory alignment. And we have Board Policy DB is the policy that we reference for this requirement. So included in the budget will be very similar to what you were provided last year, and that's the budget message, the estimated revenues reflecting the new year and 2 years immediately preceding. We must provide that to you by year, by fund, and by source. The same information for proposed expenditures by year, by fund, and by source, and also activity. And then the amount required for the payment of interest, amortization, and the redemption charges on the debt of the school district. Also included a general budget summary. That is a document that we provide to you each month as part of the Treasurer's Report, and that's the financial snapshot by fund. This provides you a budget development calendar, and I always like to highlight for you that it's interesting in public education the process by which we must provide for you a recommended budget for approval, and that is often before we receive final information impacting the upcoming year. So to highlight for you that monthly budget amendments, of course, do continue each month throughout the year. In August, we will receive our certified assessed valuation data from Greene County, and that will be utilized then to set the tax levy for the upcoming fiscal year, and that tax rate hearing would occur in the summer. And then in January, we started the budget development process with meetings with managers of budgets, and also providers developed. Much of the data will not be finalized until we get to that June 6th presentation. The June 6th presentation for the budget in whole will also include our projections for revenue at that time. And then we'll seek your approval at the June 27th meeting. We do have a requirement provided by the state that we set the budget prior to July 1 for the upcoming fiscal year. We run a fiscal year July 1 through June 30 each year. Whoa. We won't be going back to that. So clarifications and feedback. Again, shortest presentation ever, just to frame up for you the direction we're headed and why we take that path in looking at the 7 funds. Pretty basic.
Look forward to it.
Questions or comments? Appreciate the outline, so we know that each of our
What to
meetings,
expect.
what to expect.
Okay. Great.
A lot of work.
Thankfully, there's a vast team working together to make it happen, and that's the learning side and the operations side, doing that together.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to our information reports 3.01, Portrait of a Graduate Update and Engagement. Dr. Dawson.
Good evening. I'm here to provide you a quick update on Portrait of a Graduate, and then we're going to have an engagement activity with Dr. Lemon. Portrait of a Graduate, this work really is rooted from the very first listening and learning tour with Dr. Jungman, when he was asking what people want in public education. And the measures of student success varied from some of our academic achievement scores to some of those more character traits that we want. Through this project, Dr. Hackenworth and his team have developed a process to gather feedback from our community. In December, the team went together and said they've reversed this. They used to bring in and say, what do you want in the focus group? This time they went to the literature, did a research, and identified the top 20 attributes of graduates across the country. We're partners with this work with Ed21, who is an innovative think tank. We have a number of school districts going down this path at the same time. We were able to link arms with them and identify some of these attributes. From that moment, we were able to then push it out into the community through students, parents, community members, employees, and ask them, hey, of these 20, which ones stick to you the most, and your feedback. And now we're at this point in February and March. Now we have that group, and we're starting to identify those top 10. This is the response from the 1,753 folks. You can see we had 35% of were students. I believe some of you probably engaged in this activity as we sent it out to you in some updates. We also had parents, employees, and then community members and non-parents. So we had a nice, robust sample that came up with a number of findings. This is really a very interesting, this is a heat map based on the 20 from the different categories, and I'll just direct your eyes right at the very top of respectful. So you can see our community, our employees, our parents, and our students all believe being respectful is an attribute of a graduate as we think about the K-12 experience. And we see a problem solver. Again, 3, 2, 2, and 4 as they ranked them 1 through 18, or 17, I think it is, 18. So that's a pretty consistent across all of our stakeholder groups. Now there are a couple of spots where I want to direct your attention. One is ethical character. Ethical character from the community and our non-parents was number 1. And our students was number 18. So there's a huge disconnect. Maybe there's a lack of clarity of what ethical character means to the students. I would hope that's what it is. Then we also have that with number 1 of the students. I would also direct your attention to creative. And this is a very interesting line, too, to show you that kind of different stakeholder groups. The students believe that being creative is their number 1 attribute for success as a graduate. And our other stakeholders believe it was in that 13, 14 range. So that's created a different voice for what the attributes are. I'm really proud of the team for seeking stakeholder voices instead of just one general voice. What they did is they took the top 5 from each of the categories, and some of them overlapped, and they've come up with the attributes for SPS. This is where they're at right now. Ethical character is up at the top because it was part of our communities. But creative is also in there because it was part of the students. So you'll see that top 5. I want to draw your attention to the very last one. It's academically empowered. This was not a characteristic in the first 20. This is that foundational skills of reading, writing, communicating that we are in the business for. So that was a non-negotiable, has to be up there to kind of move this work forward. What we're going to do is I want to invite Dr. Lemon up, and she is going to engage you in, I think we're going to invite some ELT members too and pair you up and do an engagement process to help frame the definitions of these attributes.
Do you want us to hold off questions?
No, go
after
right
this?
ahead. Go right ahead. What's your question?
Are you getting ready to talk about how you're moving forward defining them, or can I ask a survey question?
You can ask a survey question.
Okay. I cannot remember because I've seen so many surveys.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind me, did you define those words?
We did not.
Okay.
They were just words on a list.
Okay.
We asked people to identify their
Okay.
top 10. What we're doing now, and that's really where we're
Right.
at in this work with
Is
Dr. Lemon, is
operationally
to take you,
defining them.
is now we're going to take you into operational definitions, and we're seeking feedback. So they've done some focus groups with students, teachers, parents, and tonight we're going to engage the board in that feedback process.
So did you have a conversation about why you did or did not define those words? Okay, I would just love to
Right,
hear
so I
that
think-
because those words mean so many different things depending on your
Yeah.
audience.
Right,
Yeah.
so I think it would be easy for us to take a textbook definition from anywhere,
Yeah.
right? So we really want to make sure that once we find the attributes that work for our community, that we define them and what they mean for our community by using that voice as opposed to maybe a definition that we might bring in.
Okay.
You don't have any demographics of the groups. Is there any demographics of the groups at all?
They only identified they were one of those
Parents.
4
Okay.
buckets.
Nothing past that.
That's right.
Okay. Just kidding. All right.
Okay, Dr. Lemon's got a fun tool to help us engage, to start
I'm here,
talking
so we're
about
gonna
these.
play a little bit. So you are going to be partnered with some ELT members. So I'm going to let them come up and find you. So you might kind of move around, find room for your partner here.
We're going to pull up a chair
Sure,
next
pull
to
up
you.
a chair and join you.
They're going to be general. They're going to work.
What are we doing? Hi.
I usually wear good socks today, so I put mine on.
Oh, nice.
You will decide between your partnership who's going to be the tech expert. So decide who's going to be the tech expert. You just need one. So one person needs a cell phone. Everyone else is not. If you're the tech expert, you're going to go to menti.com and you will put in the code. Okay.
That's you, man.
What is it? Oh, Minty.com.
There does seem to be
And you'll put it in
a
the-
consistency here. The board members,
The tech experts.
I think they have stuff loaded already.
so do you have to spell it correctly then?
You do have to spell Minty. Jerry's the tech expert. All right, so I'm going to jump out into my tool here.
Isn't it changing? Okay, I've not seen that.
Okay, so it's MENTI. The nice thing is the code stays on the screen, so if you get lost at any time, you can jump back in. The code also will allow you to refresh. So if your screen gets stuck, tech people just refresh your device, and you can jump right back in. So again, this is going through that process of helping us to define. We're going to ask you to think quickly because we want to go based on what's your gut reaction as opposed to spending a lot of time wordsmithing. I'm a recovering English teacher myself, so I know how long we could spend on things like this. So let's move forward. As a team,
Your gut reaction.
do we need a little second for you guys to jump in? As a team, you have about 30 seconds to decide what are 2 words that come to mind when you think of ethical character. Once you come up with 2 words, you'll hit submit. You have about 30 seconds. Please do not use the word ethical in your group assignment. So you're going to define ethical. Okay, you have 3 minutes and you can use the Wordle to help you. Just you and your partner. Okay? Come up with the definition for ethical.
I know, it's individual that condemns consistent.
So I would say that it's consistent with one another. There's some sort of code about it. I don't know.
We're in. It's like a more. We're in. We don't want to get. We're in twice. Okay, good.
But I think that's I know.
Right. Honesty, reflect honesty, integrity.
Okay, so as you start to populate that, our definitions will come up. So I'll go back to the Wordle. Okay, you have about 1 minute left to submit your answer. Just so you know the process, we take all the definitions from the community, we're downloading that, that's what the tool allows us to do, and then to create one. So I need a few more groups to hit submit. Don't wordsmith yourself to death. It'll take too long and I'll get kicked off the stage.
Those of you who can't commit, get on with it.
All right, you got 30 seconds. I'm going
Brady
to
and
move
I
you
are
on.
well done with this.
You can do it. Here we come. All right, our next word, there's a few more of you ready to hit submit, but some of you are ready to move on. So we took respectful and responsible citizen and we put them together. We feel like when we define this is when we could combine those attributes together. So when you think of a respectful, responsible citizen, what are 2 words that come to mind? Those are yours. Jerry Lee's first one. We were second. Second? It speeds up as we go once you learn.
They'll know what we do.
All right, so same process. We're going to move forward and you're going to define responsible, respectful citizen. So I'll go back to that Wordle. You have 3 minutes. How would you define a respectful, responsible citizen?
So what's the question? The question is define. Oh, define.
Okay. We're all right.
That's what's, yeah.
Technology. Process.
Civic mindedness, engagement.
I'm not looking to sort of.
It's because we're all.
You guys actually, yep. So we can count it. Okay.
It's no big deal.
All right, how many do we have in? Let's see. You guys did good. All right, next one. So we combine problem solver and critical thinker, another one we feel like we could put together. So problem solver and critical thinker. So two words that come to mind when you think of that.
I think we got. Do you really want this? I mean, is there? That's not. That's too. Like, are you? Okay.
Keep saying that we've already mentioned. Okay, problem solving.
I think.
I really need to hear.
I was gonna say I haven't been playing for real. I'll have to go back and play.
I'm not sure.
Well, now we need.
So go back so you can see your words.
Are we in a sentence now?
Can be motivated to all kinds of negative things.
So when you said that, it just sparked us. My personal just to connect people. Like us. To improve the lives and the quality of lives for others.
Because I just think quality of the goal towards which you're focusing is important.
Right.
I'm motivated. Suddenly motivated.
We'll take about one more minute for the rest of you to hit submit on that.
So, no,
All right, our next word is communicator. I think it's really interesting. This felt really low on the student side. When we did this work with students, when they defined communicator, the number one word that came up for them was talkative. And it was really low on their scale, because what do we ask students to do? So the parents last night, the number one word that came out of communicator was listener. Exactly. So this goes back to the idea of defining and making sure that we didn't just pick attributes from one pool or another, right? That we combine and then really define and work with our students for them to understand what it means. So what does communicator mean to you? Talkative?
I think it's at least if I'm doing it, it's positive. Motivational.
I think of being you're open.
Not all communicators are responsible for it, but if we're doing this,
When you're talking, then you can empathy and articulate.
Some of you cheat the system and are doing 2 words, so that's okay. We cheated. You figured it out that you can cheat the system. Yeah.
But the miniature flag.
All right, so I see a lot of message, which is interesting considering the audience that you serve. So you'll work on a definition for him. Now we're going to work on a definition here.
Express various views or beliefs or empathy doesn't. That's what it means to be a position. And articulate motivate and listen and understand.
Yeah, I guess it just needs to be
Appropriate.
The goal would be that it's well written, ideally.
right.
All right, we're getting there. Let's take about 30 more seconds. Let's submit on that.
What are we doing?
Pausing for everybody to catch up.
We're listening.
We're going to listen and communicate. All right, we're pretty close here. So adaptable was one that was really high for students, and it was not high for the adults who answered the survey. So our students told us that they feel like they have to be adaptable in today's world. So what are 2 words that come to mind? Think of it up. So every group we've worked with, the more we do this, the quieter the partners. They like to start with their own.
Open-minded.
Like it's a secret.
To contemplate other ways of being really.
All right, so you'll work on a definition for adaptable.
Open to the awareness of different situations and capable of acting appropriately. Because I know a lot of people who recognize different situations but are clueless, right? I mean, they're kind of wondering, this is how you deal with it. Okay, yeah. And are able to act accordingly. I mean, we've got
circumstances required.
they do what they do.
Different situations and are able to act accordingly.
Are we close? See how we're doing?
Yeah.
2 more groups. Go ahead and wrap up your definition. All right, looks good.
Situational acuity.
This one got deep.
Right. Who's the situational acuity? That's really good.
Situational acuity, right over here.
My situational acuity sucks.
All right. This was another one that was really high on our student list. So it was their second, open-minded. It was pretty low on the adult list. So again, something else our students feel like they have to have today. So 2 words that come to mind when you think of open-minded.
Yeah.
Determine it. I'm trying to just part of here, the inclusion, all of it. I think those are, when I mean college, well, that's exactly. The thing that was raging is a less than inclusive community and tolerance.
Inclusive.
And I don't understand
So I see empathy is growing for this group. It's been the #1 group. That empathy is growing for this group on the screen. It was actually the word that came up biggest for the
17 times.
on the student. All right. So you will define open-mindedness.
You already said 17
Jerry is now the text-to-speech. He's upped his tech game. He's everyone. Just want you to know that he is telling, he's texting to speech his answers.
how very techy of you.
Careful of that.
Oh my gosh. I saw that.
Wow.
We'll see it again.
Who has done that?
Could you use some sort of German word or something?
We always go first. Ours are totally appropriate.
Oh, yeah.
That was.
Are you going to call us the name right now? Seriously?
So your last one is academically empowered, and this is those foundational skills, right? So these are when we think about what we can see on a report card or what we can see on some of our scores. So when we think of academically empowered, what are 2 words? This is your last one. You're on the home stretch here.
I don't mean breadth and depth.
Okay.
Breadth and depth.
I'm going to Google that.
But you're empowered.
Because they presumably would have depth and appropriate subject matter, and then the depth and subject matter, and then breadth.
Let's get rid of some of this.
Translator did write it up and make it weird.
Anybody else find it?
So there's one.
You don't think?
All right. Your last definition, what does it mean to be academically empowered?
Learn is
Learn is good. Are we to write a sentence now, or what's the deal?
Yes, you should be. And then not maybe forward.
Last question.
Oh, it didn't.
This is going to go to
Did it come up now for you?
Yep.
Brady, are you good now?
Where's that? Oh, we got it.
those questions. Now to figure out answers. The questions are more important. I'm working on it too.
Right.
There's a base.
base level sounds. Almost a year on.
Is there a prize? Because we usually just start
Because it sticks.
Charles, he's not near you, but he is lucky. So
All right, so let's try to finish up in about 10 seconds. We'll hit submit. How did you
I
go?
believe it, but you're not quite in his neighborhood. Do you see his stuff? Right, if you
like
have
we're
under
close?
tonight, then you do that.
We're almost there.
Okay. They went from first to like crafting this final.
Yeah. Not a big payoff either.
It's much better.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for playing our tool tonight. So just so you know, we've engaged thousands up to this point in what the attributes would be. And now we're looking at engaging hundreds and what the definitions might be. So this tool allows us to take all of the words and dump them together and the definitions together so we can see themes. Then we'll come back to you with a more refined definition for each and do a little process around that to make sure that you're comfortable with where we are. So that's where we are with the process. Still moving forward pretty quickly, but we hope you enjoyed this and being part of it. If you felt like you wanted to do some of it again, just reach out to me and I can shoot the tool back out to you privately and you can.
So, just a question. So Nicole, this is getting feedback on what our list of portrait of graduate would look like.
That's correct.
So that's what this is all about, what you're currently collecting, in addition to what Mike showed us this evening?
Congressional Review Act pulled back. So I think the potential of those policies coming up may have been slimmed down significantly because those rules don't apply anymore. The things that they had put before, they're pulled back to just the law at this point, and the rules and regs will have to be reconstructed, we believe, at this point. So that could be another 9-month process or so, likely at the federal level. So policies that we thought were coming may be on hold for a bit until that gets reconstructed.
Very good. We'll move on to our budget development, which we've already heard from Carol on that. So we'll move on to unfinished business, 7.01. No unfinished business this evening. And so we'll move on to public comments to address non-agenda items. This is, the Board of Education allows comments on topics not related to the printed agenda. And the comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you're going to give a comment this evening, please watch the screens. There's a timer to let you know where you are in your comment. And we'll ask that you finish at the end of 3 minutes. It's inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in open meetings. If you have concerns about an individual or individuals, these concerns should be addressed through the appropriate administrative supervisors, either at the school or in the district office. So at this time, we do have 2 non-agenda item comments. So I would ask for Danny Lee Henderson to come. Please, Mr. Henderson, come up to the podium and watch the screen for your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, school board and superintendent. I appreciate all you do to apply the Board of Education to the seat of knowledge. Generality to discourage discrimination. Discrimination is prejudice because of biased opinions. We have certain freedoms that are privileges with responsible behavior. Teachers set the example for students. Protection against discrimination includes consideration, courtesy, respect. Undue neglect leads to discrimination. Inclusiveness without exclusion of others' rights to say majority rules can lead to minority discrimination. When someone feels taken advantage of, this can lead to feelings of depression. If we treat others as we would like to be treated, we help make our schools safer. If we have unity and less disturbance, we can all get along and learn together. Let's have more cooperation and a better environment. Thank you for listening with an open mind. I hope I am a good influence. Pleasant atmospheres lead to successful accomplishment. Harmony contributes to peace. Consideration with stimulation does more to promote motivation than manipulation. Threats lead to regrets. Listening with a caring, compassionate heart is a good place to start. Let's make everyone welcome. Understanding helps people make sense. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
No, not at this time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you being here. Okay, next, Alan Kemper, will you please? Podium. Thank you.
Good evening, school board. I'm really happy to be here. As you've seen me appear before you, I always have something burning I think is really exciting to share so that you can share with the students and tell the teachers. We have some fast-breaking evidences that are blowing evolution out of the water, showing that creationism is the best model to look at. It has all the evidence behind it. We can say that. I've shared about all that before, but what I want to share is I see in our nation there is a real need for us to truly come and unify and say that we believe that through our due process of constitutional election, we have a president today in Washington who's doing his best to elevate education. He's doing his best to elevate all the things in our society that we want to see happen. We need to rally behind, and I think it'd be great if the school board would have a daily communication with Washington, D.C. So I propose that you take very seriously to encourage Mr. Trump, have the students to write letters. We're behind you. We're praying for you. We love you. Thank you for being our president. Second thing is, I'd love to see our city, as I shared at City Council last night, and I am running for City Council. I am the Alan R. Kemper you've heard about. So, friends, I shared with them this other thing I think very helpful. I believe it's time for us to have a third sister city program. And I believe because our President Trump labored right on in saying that we need to support Israel, that's where we should start to have a city in Israel comparable to Springfield, Missouri. And so I'm working on searching out and finding a comparable Israeli city that is like us in our enterprises, our education, our faith, and I think it would be very great for the cultural exchange between our Springfield students and Israeli students on Facebook and everything else, all kinds of social media. So I want to present this and say that please take it to heart. I'm going to be sharing with City Council more. I'm not going to let this go because God told Abram, He said to get out of your country, go to the land I'll show you, I'll make your name great, and in you all nations of the earth shall be blessed. Well, we, the nation United States of America, know that we are vitally related to Israel. Looking back at our Revolutionary War, had it not been for the Jewish people giving their gold, the revolutionary soldiers would have died at Valley Forge, and that would have been the end. And that's the fact. And George Washington, to commemorate what the Jews did, made sure that our symbol, our great seal, has the Jewish candelabra, the menorah, on it. Did you know that? And it has the glory burst of the stars, 13 stars, making a Star of David. You can see it on the back of our dollar bill. That's how much George Washington was wanting to say, thank you, Jews. Now, this week begins Purim, which is a celebration of our deliverance from wicked, tyrannical leaders, from Haman to Hitler. So thank you very much. I hope you teach it in your classes. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to strategic discussion. However, before we get that, I think we're going to take just a short break. So we'll be back at in 5 minutes at 6:35. So we are back ready to go. So at this time, we will talk about our strategic discussion, and Dr. Dawson is here to provide an update.
Just to refresh your memory on the journey we've been on since January, bringing you strategy updates regarding our strategic plan. This has been around focus area 1. We did goal 1 with Dr. Harold. We did goal 2. We've done some middle of the year achievement updates. And here we are at goal 3, which is really about partnerships and collaboration. And to bring that work to you tonight is Marty Moore and Dana Webb.
We are delighted to be with you this evening and want to walk you through this process. So as we look at focus area 1 and goal 3, we're really going to focus on the different strategies that the district has for collaborating and partnering with community organizations and private businesses to help enrich learning experiences for our students. And so you'll be hearing from both Dana Webb and myself. And what we know is that there are multiple facets of this work, and that when you're engaging with partnerships in the community, it's very important that their end user experience is customer friendly and laser focused and meaningful across the things that are important to them. And so we knew before we really began to work to engage partners that we needed to in-house make sure that we had a unified approach to partner engagement. And so we started thinking about the different buckets of work that we wanted those partnerships to evolve into, and we knew that there was a traditional bucket that we had been pretty good at over the years of gathering resources around under-resourced families and schools and making sure that those Maslow kind of needs were met so that that learning could happen. We also knew that there were community entities that had done a lot of work in isolation from us, sometimes in partnership with us, and there was an opportunity to ramp that up. And then kind of some unplowed territory. GoCaps teased us into that experiential learning outside of the school day and outside of the traditional campus. And so we started thinking about how we could gather those partners around those 3 buckets of ideas. And what we found that was so very interesting is that there was an intersection point between the things that aligned with our strategic goals, our strategic plan, the vision and mission of the organizations that we were engaging with, and possibilities for program outreach. And so we brought the things that were important to SPS to the table. Those partner entities brought the things that were important to them at the table. And there was this wonderful synergy that happened and exceeded all of our expectations in terms of those 3 different outputs. And so we're going to be spending some time tonight talking about that. And so the first bucket that we're going to look at, again, goes back to, are we meeting those basic needs of students so that they can be successful learners when they go to schools? And I'm very fortunate in this work to be able to partner with Dr. Harrell's team, he's here tonight, and Phyllis Wolfram's team. So these are the needs that really focus around food insecurity, safety issues, homelessness, mental health, some of those kinds of things, and making sure that under-resourced and underrepresented students have the things that they need to enter the school successfully. You've had the ability to see a lot of those partners showcased in our Honoring Excellence segments, and we'll continue to bring and showcase that work. I think another highlight of the work so far is using that Kids First Committee, which had already been in place, to serve as the hub for all of those community entities to plug into. And one of the first things that Dr. Jungman did was reach out to that group and ask them to form a strategic plan. So instead of using that meeting time just as kind of a general sharing, it's a very focused piece focused around food insecurity, mental health, and transportation. So the needs that that committee itself determined as the things that ought to be driving our work across the district, help them plug in and leverage those connection points. By doing that, we've also been able to maximize the resources that each of those partners brings to the table and figure out who does what best. So when you look at food insecurity, Ozark Food Harvest is large. They've been in the food game for a really long time. So if we leverage their expertise and let other providers buy into that buying power and that distribution system, that benefits everybody. So we let everybody figure out what they did best and ramp that up. We've also been able to collectively determine the needs at each site and have created a very large spreadsheet to determine what the needs, what the wants, and the yet-to-be-dones are for each of the different sites, and that has helped accelerate the work. As we do that, it has caused us to figure out a really good way for people who come forward to be able to jump into the pool of helping students in our district. And so what you see before you is that kind of continuum, that roadmap that we use to funnel people into the right buckets. So there's not a right or wrong place on that arrow, it's just where do you choose to engage. So some people like to do things behind the scene, not be very visible, not be very actively engaged. Some people want to really build that relationship with students. And again, none of those things are wrong or right. It's just, what does your organization want to do? What do they have the capacity to do? And then where do they want to get started? And so we try to use this as the starting point for new partner contacts that are looking at providing those resources. We try to match their level of commitment and where they'd like to engage with the sites. The next thing we try to do with each of the three groups that we're really focused on, that Kids First group, that faith-based group, and then other community organizations, is really make sure that they understand what we're about. And so we've ramped up our partner orientation piece to really ground them in what does it look like to be an engaging, relevant, and personal partner for the district. And how do you honor the confidentiality at sites if you see things about a student to keep that safe and protected? How do you build those personal relationships? And how do you, as you are ready as an individual in an organization or an organization, ramp up your involvement as you're ready to do that? And so we have crafted brochures that we use, and those are often personalized for different organizations. So this is kind of our generic one. We might have one for Freshwater Church or Life 360 and any of the different entities. So it's SPS partnering with this other entity. And that successful orientation has helped us move further and faster over the course of the year. I mentioned the spreadsheet that defines the needs for each of the sites. It was really important that we began to sift through the desires that people had. So while a rose bush that we plant at field is a lovely thing, if nobody's there to water it in the summer, nobody's there to prune it, nobody's there to take care of it, it doesn't have that impact that we think our partners would like to have. So we went back to each of the different sites and we asked them to delineate their 5 priority needs. And so that's all in a spreadsheet for us to look at. And so as partners engage with us, the question we ask them is, how would you like to help and who would you like to help? And so each school has a customized one-pager that lists and narrows the focus for our partners so they can see immediately how they would like to engage. And so if they say, we'd like to plant rose bushes, we shuffle through our papers and, gosh, rose bushes aren't at the top of the list. Would you like to? We have gardens. How about that? You know, we try to funnel them into the channels that are appropriate. And so as we look at the things that we've been able to do in that kind of resource area, you know that when Ms. Embry came before you earlier this year, she talked about recalibrating the partner experience and the 3 tiers. We've talked about the orientation process, the site needs, and where we need to go next is to continue to pull in multiple partners who have the same desire. So at the end of this month, we're bringing together Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Boys and Girls Club, RSVP reading partners, Ozarks Literacy Council, and Community Partnerships of the Ozarks, all of whom do some kind of reading mentoring program, and thinking about what's the power of us collaborating together, and that's actually our hashtag, Better Together. How can we leverage and pull in more volunteers for the things that we all hold collectively responsible while maintaining that individual partner space? So it's very exciting to see what that work is going to look like. The other thing that has come out of a lot of the work that we've done is a need for a secondary mentoring program. So we're going to pilot a middle school mentoring program in the fall of this next year. We're trying to line up those partners. And then as the final thing for improvement, we're developing a partner manual that has very specific information about logistical pieces so that we're all kind of speaking out of the same book, so to speak. So now we're going to move to a second bucket. And we're going to look at those community organizations. Oh, yes,
I'm sorry,
absolutely.
I just have a quick question. Back on your last slide, and you may not be able to describe this, but I'm just kind of thinking, what do you see a secondary mentor looking like?
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting about that is that, and we're going to move into that kind of into the next piece, is that for many years, we tried to do everything ourselves. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And there were already groups that were moving in those spaces. And so in the same way that Ozark Food Harvest has got the food piece down, there isn't really anybody that does mentoring as well as Big Brothers and Big Sisters does. It's a nationally vetted system, high quality of retention and high quality impact. And so we've been working with Big Brothers and Big Sisters to kind of figure out what that looks like. And where we are right now is we know what it doesn't look like, but we haven't yet stuck the landing for what it does need to look like. Middle school students, by and large, don't want to go have lunch with their adult buddy. That's not very cool. So it's a social experience. So what we our working hypothesis right now is it will likely be an after-school engagement piece, and it will likely be more of a group collective, possibly centered around a meal or a study group. And if we're lucky, for Justin's work that he's doing in athletics and activities, it'll filter between the end of school and the start of that activity and fill a void that's already there for our under-resourced families. So we're still, the details of that are still being worked out. So now as we start thinking about those existing community organizations that are already in place, we've had a couple of strategy pieces that we've been working on. And if you recall, when I came before you in May of last year, we had done some community listening sessions. And they told us basically that there were 3 areas that were very important to them for us to focus on. The first was cultural consciousness training, that we needed to develop some skill and ability to interact, specifically with people and communities that looked different than predominantly a white middle class way of thinking. We needed to have culturally relevant supports that leveraged community assets, that didn't compete with, but that merged with. And we needed to have more culturally relevant communication structures. So what I'm going to share is how we've ramped up each of those 3 things. So as we think about the things that we've been doing over the last year, and you've been hearing about what we've been doing with Ignite and some of the classroom changes, one of the phrases that you've heard repeatedly is that idea of pace, place, and path. And so figuring out the pace at which people are comfortable at moving, going to places and configuring that environment. And so one of the key changes that I think we have been about in reaching out to under-resourced populations is that before, we typically thought of, there's a parent-teacher conference from 3:30 to 5:30. There's a Wednesday night STEAM event, come to that. And so last spring, we began doing some pilot sites at area churches. And that worked really well, but when you start thinking of a community as large as Springfield, you can't get to every church on Wednesday night and have that kind of outreach. So we brought multiple community members in for a Better Together session and really listened. And what they told us is a Saturday monthly event would be an appropriate way to interact. And so we started at Deliverance Temple on Chestnut Expressway in January, and we brought together Springfield Public School staff, we brought together people in the community, and had parallel programming for adults and children in the community. Followed by, kicked off with a breakfast, had the programming, had a lunch, highly engaged with literacy and STEAM events, and built understanding and relationships. So we've just started, we'll have our 3rd one this March. But what we've seen start from kind of a Springfield Public School effort in support with NAACP and Bartley Decatur Community Center has brought in the library, has brought in multiple groups. It's also expanded, instead of just the curriculum and equity and access team, we brought in nutrition services. They've provided things about diet, about how to lower your cholesterol. We brought in Jeff Rogers from Wellness that's talked about the sugar content in your food and how you can use that to avoid a diabetic problem. Instead of, here's what we've got, we've asked them, what do you need? And we've matched that programming around those needs. Similarly, in the Hispanic community, we've been working with the Alliance for Leadership Advancement and Support, and they have offered multiple series for families in the community, talking about how to prepare your child for college, how to fill out FAFSA information, how to go back and get your GED. Again, we started with sessions over at Taft when we were still located in Taft. And it got to where they were very comfortable moving in that. And they said, but you know, where we're really comfortable is at our church. Would you consider having a session after Mass on Sunday? So our ALS group meets on Sunday from 2 to 4. So it's a very different way of conducting programming, but what we're finding is it's beginning to build trust in the community, and the sky's the limit. So what started as a really small effort is beginning to grow. That's in addition to some of the other things that we've ramped up this year. So Canvas allows us to outreach to families specifically and students specifically to target students for information. This event is at this night. Here are specific scholarships that are aligned to your interests and that are geared specifically for you. We started a middle school series to extend on the fine work that MSU does in the STEP conference. And so Lawrence Anderson, who's not here tonight, he's at the Minorities in Business meeting, does a session for middle school students, What's in Your Backpack, introduces them to key figures in the community who are excelling and look like these students. And it's been a very powerful program for our students. And one of we do a lot of surveys with each of these, and one of the students said, I feel like you see me. I feel like you care about me. So we're beginning to build that relationship, and it's exciting to see that happen. We've launched an Inspire Ed grant to allow teachers who move into kind of a cultural diversity realm to finance. So you get $500 for your idea and $500 for implementation to expand our reach within curriculum units. And I'm really proud, and many of you were there, and I appreciate that attendance, at the completion of our district level diversity training, Courageous Conversations. And we look forward to continuing that again in the fall of next year. So impact is something that is really meaningful in terms of the work. And so what I would tell you is I'm not going to be able to tell you how much it's impact a student's trajectory yet. Because right now what we've had to do is build the infrastructure. And so when you see the community organizations that we engaged with last year, that was largely 2. This year we've expanded that reach. So we've really started only really connecting with NAACP and ALAS. And so now other partners are coming around with us to do this equity and access work. Elevate Lives, Brother to Brother, Springfield Greene County Library, CPO, Berry Community Center, Bartley Decatur Community Center, and MSU's Speech and Language Department. So we're adding multiple partners there. We've gone from one community event, we hosted the satellite site at Explorer last year, to 13 sites. So we have a regular once a month literacy night at Bartley Decatur. We have a Saturday event on the 3rd Saturday of every month. And then we have the ALAS series. Overall, we have a small cohort of 37 families that are engaged. Those have multiple children. We've made sure that those are unduplicated families that we're reaching out. And these are people that I would tell you largely had not engaged with us in what I would say positive ways. And so we're really working to build that trust. We have that online communication tool. We have direct student engagement where we're going out to the school for those sessions. And then our traditional event, month of, where we go in that we've always done for programming. So we're not going to pull that away until we've ramped up this other support. But I think it's very exciting to see where we can go with that.
I'm going to ask a question about this. So because you present to us on a variety of using the terms partnerships, I think about the luncheon that I went to and sat with Missouri Conservation people with Explore luncheon several months ago, and that's under partnerships. I'm just wanting some clarification in terms of terminology. When you're using partnerships from the start of your presentation to this point, is there an internal language you talk about those partnerships? You said I'm trying to say different than like all of our school partnerships.
I would say if you looked at our strategic partners, those are the ones that are Bass Pro. We have discovered, we have people in their building. They give resources, they give people. It's a very robust piece. Then we have resource partners. They maybe send people, right? And some of those are partners that Dana's going to be talking about.
Okay.
But there's the closest thing I can tell you is we've tried to put it in buckets. who does resources that support needs for kids, who does the supports to kind of grow and fill the gap. So if you thought about a pyramid, I'm talking with my hands here, but if you talked about a pyramid of interventions, our tier 1 is that basic curriculum everybody gets. So some of the partners I'm talking about now is that tier 2, an extra dip. We're going to give you a little bit more to get you back on track, right? And then there's that whole experience piece that Dana's going to talk about.
Do you see the question?
I do.
I mean,
and I wish it was clean.
Okay,
I'm going to tell you, it's caused all kinds of.
Probably something we're still trying to grapple
Right.
with, right?
Yeah, because we're growing
We have
both
hundreds
of
of
these
partnerships,
areas.
and they're growing. And I think what we've really talked about is buckets, right?
Yeah.
So the resource partners, learning partners, and maybe mentorship. So you almost have the academic, the stuff, and then the social supports, right? Or other kinds of.
And some of them
We don't
do
have
all
great
three.
definitions yet, but
Yeah.
I think those are things that we're trying to define as we build this up.
I just think it's important for even, I mean, we're still trying to figure it out, but
Yep.
even the public, when you look at community organizations engaged, well, we had how
Right.
many with Explore? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's not
Right.
exactly.
And you're going to see numbers that
Okay.
are way bigger than it. This
Right.
is just that learning extra layer of support for those under-resourced kids.
So trying to figure out how to define.
Yeah, Marty, so would we correct? Because when I first saw this slide, I'm thinking,
That's it.
no, I know there's more
Yeah.
than in 15,
Yeah.
16. So would it be, if we're going to identify, would these numbers be, if you're looking at the closing the achievement gap focus?
I think that's fair to
That's
say.
what this
And
would be.
this slide specifically is only for our priority population,
Okay.
which would be our African American,
Okay, I get it.
Hispanic, and free and reduced lunch students.
So I think that narrows it down to help
Yes,
us
that's a
understand.
good
This is not
clarification.
district-wide.
No.
This is specific to the focus that you explained to us in the slide before.
Yeah.
And then I think the slide before, I think you do mention the terminology in the slide before related to closing achievement gaps. So that's how we can process this.
But I really appreciate that. We are trying to clear the,
Sure.
and it's getting easier for us. We know point person here, point person
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But when you try to really explain the complexities of it, especially in a
Sure.
slide, it's complex. And so, where we are in terms of our next steps is to really begin to expand our working definition of relevance. As we talk about these project-based learning pieces, we need to make sure that as we create those learning modules, multiple voices and perspectives are included. So it really filled my cup tonight to hear you as a board use the words inclusive and multiple perspectives, because sometimes our curriculum still has some work to do. We've launched a See It to Be It campaign, and we're being very purposeful about holding up role models in those communities so they see a scientist that looks like them. They see a nurse, they see an engineer, they see an architect, and know that they can relentlessly pursue that, I think is the word you used, Jerry, when we were talking about what it means to be academically empowered. We want to empower every child to be able to realize their dream. We want to build on the success of those pilot efforts that we've launched at Deliverance Temple and Barton Decatur, and think about other satellite sites where we can equip the community to manage that site. So it's not about us going in and doing all of the work, it's us about pulling together those community partners to duplicate the success that we're seeing there. We think it's a model that works, that parallel programming for families and for their students. And then we want to expand the community feedback loops. We do a survey for each of the different events that we do, but we also want to expand that to do a semester listening tool to really get that broader feedback and to be able to see satisfaction trends and to see engagement trends and make sure that those numbers are growing and they're growing in the right way. And then we'll continue that district training in cultural competency. And so now we're going to move to that third bucket, unless you've got a question.
Yeah, I just,
we'll
a couple
pause.
comments and a couple questions. Did Kids First used to be called something else? That committee group?
There's a whole bunch of those committees
I know.
that start with kids, and I used to have a little cheat sheet.
Okay.
But
I'm just
Kids
trying to put
First
it-
is ours that started here at the
Okay.
district. My understanding is Dr. Ritter started it.
Okay.
And the goal was to make sure that everybody knew what everybody was doing.
In the community.
In the community,
Became the
in our
standard
schools.
for resources.
Because sometimes we were over-helping one place, and we weren't
Missing,
helping another
yeah.
place.
Okay. I just, there's every commission and committee
Yeah,
has
every
a
child
me-
promise and-
Yeah, so I
yeah,
was
it's
just
like-
wondering if that was okay. And then I just would like to acknowledge, I know one of your strengths is individualization, and I love that we are individualizing and finding the right fit for when people want to do something and that it fits the school needs. And I mean, like, I love that individualization approach.
I'm
for
arranging it, you know.
Yes, I
So-
know that. I know that. And that takes a lot more time and effort to do that, but it's much more purposeful in the end. So I just would like to acknowledge that.
And our goal is more sustainable. So we're trying to create systems of support for kids that are going to outlast a superintendent or a worker.
Sure.
That they're community driven and they're vested.
Yeah.
So thank you for
Yep,
that.
yep.
And with great pleasure, I turn it over to Dana Webb.
Doing a great job of helping our community connect the dots.
Thank you for having us here this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. And as Marty described to you, we really think about this in 3 buckets and we have worked together on, is this your bucket or my bucket or whose bucket is it? But we talk about the resources, we talk about those social supports and relational engagement, and then we talk about programming experiences for kids. And that's really the part that I'm here to talk to you about tonight. And when we talk about enriching learning experiences with partnerships, one of those things that comes to mind is Explore, as you had mentioned. And last summer, we engaged 20 partners, and you do have the listing there. That was from our partner luncheon that we
Yes.
hosted this fall to thank all of our partners that engaged with us last summer. And 20 partners, and of those partners, at the conclusion of Explore, we surveyed them, and they said, 100% of them said, we want to do this again. And not only do we want to do it during Explore, but we have an interest to also engage during the school year too, however that might happen. So taking those things into consideration and what we learned during Explore, we were able to spin off these ideas of building experiences during the school year. And we were able to try 2 pilots this year, one of which we partnered with the YMCA and the use of Camp Wakanda with our 4th graders from 8 schools in the district, and I'll talk about that a little more on the next slide. But at the conclusion of that experience, we surveyed all of our stakeholders, and 100% of parents, teachers, principals, and the partner all said that they believed this had impact and that it provided a fun and interesting learning experience for kids. 97% of the students that took part in it found the same. You may be wondering what happened to the other the other 3% of those kids. And what we gleaned from the qualitative data, the narrative data on the survey, was that outdoor learning experiences don't always interest every kid. They may not be outdoorsy. So that was where that other 3% of the kids were. Also, the qualitative data revealed that there was a great desire to have more field experiences, more opportunities for those in the future. And again, the accomplishments of what we do in our department with matchmaking, almost taking what the partner has a desire to do and what our need is as a system and really piecing those together in a thoughtful way is, we look at these accomplishments. We had 10,000, some of this is repeat information, but it's worth repeating because it's just so fantastic. 10,600 kids attended Explore 2016. We already have, by the way, over 6,000 kids enrolled for Explore 2017. Very excited about that. Last summer, we had 20 community partners there on the listing, and we were able to provide 618 field experiences for our students with those partnerships. This year, we have engaged with already 50 partners that have said, we want to be a part of this. And we look at our partners, they're really on a spectrum of involvement. Some of them may be a partner that comes in to be an expert voice in a classroom, during a one-time event in a classroom. That's kind of an entry-level partnership. On the other hand, at the other side of the spectrum, we have partners that are hosting classrooms. right at their site. So, and we have any variation in between happening in our district, and we are piecing those partnerships together. Again, we used what we learned during Explore 2016, and through Experience SPS, we were able to launch 2 pilots of experiences during the school year, one of which was Camp Wakanda that we talked about in the last slide. That happened this past fall with 500 4th graders from 8 of our Northwest Quadrant schools. It was phenomenal. And the second of which was the involvement, the partnership with the Watershed Center. And this almost gives me goosebumps to talk about, because their mission and purpose is to educate kids about the water, first of all, about the water in the Ozarks and how it filtrates through our topography that we have in this area, and the importance of keeping it clean. And so what we are doing out there is just a natural braiding together of mission and purpose. So it's a beautiful thing to see. We started it just a week ago. We had kids starting out. We have kids from 3 middle schools, all the 7th graders. That's 580 kids, and that's Reed, Pleasant View, and Carver are out there. They've all been through their first trip, and after spring break, they will filter back through for 3 more trips, 3 more experiences out at the watershed. And so, I mean, it just continues to show us that the experiences are where it's at, and we just keep thinking of ways of how are we going to continue to expand this. GoCaps is an area that is absolutely ripe with partnerships, and I am very pleased to report to you this evening that we have engaged over 250 partners through our GoCaps network this year, and that's with 5 facilitators in 4 strands. And the partners are, for instance, we might have Cox Health as a single partner, but within that system, we have 40 different touch points with professionals in that system. So we are counting all of those people as partners within that number, if that makes sense. And also, as a note, we've expanded a 3rd GoCaps Health and Medicine strand for 2017-18 in our newly established Branson Regional Hub. So those are some of the accomplishments, and the next steps that we would like to take are in creating a long-range plan for scaling out those student experiences. How can we continue to grow? We're growing Explore, we're growing experiences during the school year, and how can we continue to do that? And what does that look like for a child's educational career, K-12? What might that experience set look like for those students? And then also we'll be gathering stakeholder feedback, as we did with Camp Wakanda at the end of our watershed experience. And one of the other things that would really be a next step is, of the 50 partners we've already engaged for Explore 2017, about half of those are already nailed down, and we have memorandums of understanding started with those. Others we're still finding that natural match and exactly how they're going to partner with us. So we have some refining to do in these weeks before Explore starts to nail those partnerships down. And the next piece that I would like to show you is, when we think about impact, I really wanted to pick a piece that would show you beyond the 4 walls of a classroom, maybe even beyond the Watershed Center or beyond a partner, how the impact of an experience can affect our community. And if you'll bear with me on this, what you're going to watch is 2 minutes and 11 seconds of an entry event for this project-based learning unit our 7th graders are taking part in. So what they are seeing is Jeff Birchler telling them about some things about our community, about some issues that we face with our water clarity in the Ozarks, and almost a call to action. So I hope that you see this and the impact that it has.
Hi, I'm Jeff.
I'm sorry, just
throw out there, just for the folks that do not know, Jeff Birchler is a retired science teacher for the school district. So it's really interesting to see how our retirees are coming back and doing some awesome things.
It's fantastic. And we also have 2 retirees out, besides Jeff being the educational director out there, we have 2 retired teachers who are receiving kids, and they are leading the rotations out there at the
one
watershed.
Debbie Good?
Debbie Good and Charles Ray.
Yeah,
Are out
okay,
there.
great.
Birchler, we're here at the Watershed Center. I am the center coordinator here at the park. We're here today to talk about some important environmental issues that have been in the news a lot recently, specifically fresh water. News stories like the crisis Flint, Michigan is facing with lead in their drinking water serve to emphasize how important it is that we protect our water quality. We tend to take abundant supplies of clean water for granted until something goes wrong. In 1984, Springfield experienced such a problem. The water coming out of the faucets had a strange look, it had a strange odor. While it was still safe to drink, it caused a lot of concern among the residents. People at that time decided that something needed to be done, and the Watershed Committee of the Ozarks was formed. Our mission is to protect and improve water resources for the city of Springfield and Greene County. Over 30 years now, we've carried out that mission through education and project management. The Watershed Center here at Valley Watermill Park is an excellent resource that's part of our educational program. Visitors here can hike miles of trails that wander through various Ozark habitats. The interpretive signs, the green building, and the best management practices all serve to educate visitors to the park about things they can do to protect our drinking water supply. It's important to realize that the water quality in our springs, our lakes, and our streams are affected by what happens on the land that drains into them. And this is where you come into the picture. We're asking students and concerned residents to come up with plans, things that they can do to improve the water quality by making changes where they live or where they go to school. Over the course of the next few weeks, you will take 4 field trips to the Watershed Center. Here at Valley Watermill Park, you will participate in a variety of activities covering water pollution, green spaces, and best management practices. Your team will use this knowledge to develop green spaces around your school. I look forward to working with you over the next few weeks as we work together to come up with plans for protecting our water quality. The health of our community, people, our economy, and the environment depends upon clean, abundant water.
So I hope that you see there, that the impact really, Jerry, Lee and I were talking during the break, that it really is the long game. The long game is we are building invested community members, one kid at a time and one experience at a time. So there really is power in that, beyond the classroom, beyond the watershed. Years from now, these kids will be able to talk to their own kids about what they learned at the watershed experience. I also wanted to point out that while we are inviting 7th graders to be out there, some of the footage that you saw were our 3rd graders out there for the splash experience this last summer. So you could, the little foot that went in the water, that was a little 3rd grader. So they were out there having a lot of fun this past summer. So that's what we have. We hope that it is a very complicated and interwoven system of partnerships, and we hope that we've explained it adequately to you this evening. We are happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
He's got 7 pages over here.
Okay, Jerry's
this is a passion. I mean, 30 years ago, I did the Partners Education Program at Champion, and so I've seen that evolve from businesses providing pencils and paper to being very superficial, and I don't mean that from a negative term, that's just where we were, to the evolution of where we are today of basically being, again, it's not negative either, intrusive within the curriculum and inclusive of what we're trying to accomplish. And I mean, to me, it's just an incredible span of 30 years to go from where we are now, or were, to where we are now. And I firmly believe that's where we got partnerships like Bass Pro and Discovery Center and Mercy, because you build up that foundation over the years to do that and become much more involved. And truly, I think that finally realizing, I think, that we're not really in the education business. I hope we're not in the education business. We're in workforce development, we're in career development. That's why we're here. Education's a tool. And making them having them exposed to the watershed, the things that they're doing is just gravy on the biscuit from the standpoint of helping these kids realize where they are. The other comment I would make is, the one thing I really like is, you guys are, Marty and all the stuff you're doing, partnerships of really creating, I mean, we have so many silos in this community. Groups doing different things, groups doing here, they're overlapping. It's lots of things are happening. And you're starting to connect the silos, which I think is a great tool. I don't want to eliminate silos necessarily, but I think the fact that you're connecting them and becoming more efficient, not necessarily us, as a community, we're becoming more efficient so that we don't step on each other's toes. That's what tends to happen. All of a sudden, you're doing something, you're doing the same thing, and I'm not giving up what I'm doing, even though you're doing this. I mean, I think putting us in 30 years ago, we were a passenger on the bus. I think now we're driving the bus and got all these resource passengers on the bus with us. And I think that's a huge paradigm shift in the way we're looking at the future of our kids. As Dana said, we were talking about, this is America. It's in the spring. And we're not going to reap some of the rewards and benefits tomorrow. And I know it's hard for people sometimes in the community to go, well, what are you getting right now? Well, this plant's not going to grow fast. It's going to take a lot of time. But you got to plant the seeds to get there. And I just appreciate all you guys have done over the years of the partnerships and collaboration of bringing people together to the table. You know, whether it's social services or faith-based, whatever, it doesn't make any difference. You guys have just done an incredible job of bringing them together to get focused on what our mission is, and not just superficial fun things to do. And field trips. Well, we still do field trips, but I can tell you right now, they're not wide, they're deep. And that's the difference that we had. We did field trips back then, but they weren't, if you asked me to say what did they contribute to the success of that child or whatever, I'd be pretty hard pressed to come up with a real definition, where now you can look and see exactly this is contributing to the success of that child. Maybe not tomorrow, but next year, and as they progress along, and not looking at, and the thing we were talking about is what you're teaching in 4th grade. We shouldn't be focused on accomplishing what they need to know in 4th grade. We need to be accomplishing what they need to know as a citizen, and what little piece in 4th grade contributes to that.
Well, when I look at that field trip and see those students not holding on to a rail, parading around, following the teacher, but they're in the stream taking notes like a scientist, so they're active versus passive, and that's another huge shift.
They're not being told, this is what we're doing.
What are you going to learn? What are you going to find today out in the field?
So much more hands-on and intrusive from the standpoint of curriculum, which is a great thing. I just applaud your guys' efforts on the whole partnership of raising them to, and I know you haven't even got up to the level you want to get to. I know that.
It's a journey, and one of the things that we've heard in our community over and over, it's not just Spanish schools, is program-rich, system-forward, right? And this is about building the system, right? Because we've got the program, or we've got the programs, we've got the partners. They want to engage. And without our direction around alignment, and I think that's exactly what Martin is for right now, especially on the resource side. Let's get alignment. We know we have needs, but sometimes the gifts don't align with the needs. They're nice, but they're not really meeting the kids where they need to be. And that's happening on the experience side now, and it's also happening.
As Bruce would preach, random arrows. They're all good, but they're not aligned in the same direction.
Real needs.
And Alina, did you have a question?
No, yeah, I was just going to tag on to a couple things Jerry said, but you said you were going to say something.
I was just going to, I know that patrons and a lot of people ask about test scores and things like that. How does that fit into all of these experiences? And the piece to that is very important is that, especially our under-resourced kids, we all learn from experiences. And as we learn, it creates a framework for which we can compare things and contrast things and build, learn, and file learning away. And if you have a kiddo who is limited on experiences, they don't have that framework to file away those things or to compare and contrast. What we're doing is we're building that structure for these kids, and we're increasing the structure for those kids that already have lots of experiences. And that's where the learning fits in. That's where the test scores come from. When you have a whole child with lots of experiences on which to tether new learning, now in 4th grade, in 10th grade, in college, and as an engaged citizen in our community, that's a structure that is long-term. And so I would, that's really, I can get on a big old soapbox on that, but that's really that point, that it's not always about test scores right now, it's about supporting our kids so that they can then engage at a higher level and show us what they know on the test scores later.
The learning that sticks, right? I always ask this question. I have a student advisory council, and every year we go back to this most memorable things of your experience in SPS. And it's always an experience and a teacher, right? Always. It's one or the other. It's either an incredible teacher that was passionate about their subject matter, or it was an experience that happened traditionally outside the walls of the classroom. Those are the two memories they leave us with, and they're exactly that. That's the things that the kids have the ability to come here every day as a great teacher, passionate about something, and an experience that pushes them outside the box.
Just one thing. I'm glad we archived these meetings, because sort of what you just said may be the single best explanation / defense of the work that we do for that kid who may not have those experiences. I mean, it's immediate gratification. The experience is valuable in and of itself, but over the long term, it builds that kind of cognitive complexity. They can begin to sort things. And in my ideal world, we wouldn't have to worry about the test scores, but we do. And I am convinced, as you explained, that this is ultimately going to pay off in that regard. So that was terrific.
Any other, Tim?
Well, the very first thing I wrote down 3 things. So the very first thing I wrote down was civic engagement. That's what this ultimately is about making citizens. And by bringing in the entire community into these partnerships to show them that this models a good community, that we're all taking care of these kids, that they are our kids, would maybe reduce some of the cynicism that you see in a lot of high school students even saying, oh, Springfield this and this. By giving them these kind of experiences at a younger age, they start to see that they are beloved. And I'm just grateful that, this goes to my second point, that we've acknowledged the limits that we have as an institution to do it all on our own. And that we've also come to the realization that there are other community bulwark agencies and individuals who want to engage in this kind of work with us. And so if we can pull them together, and I love that idea of saying, what is an agency's or an individual's or a business's passion, and what is our need, and how do we fit those two things together? How do we make those intersect? I just thought that was wonderful. So I wanted to compliment the administration on putting Dana and Marty in positions where they're allowed to focus on this work. This doesn't get done if we just say, oh, and by the way, go out and get partners. By having people that are doing exactly what they're doing is the only way we can get this done. So that's a genius as well. And this is one of the reasons why we have administration. This is why we have the overhead of administration, so that we can make things really work. And so I get that. and this is an example of that. So great learning experiences, and I think we're going to, in the next generation of adult citizens, have maybe a better citizenry in our community because of it.
And one of the places that a few of you were there, the workforce development conversation, where I was able to speak, and I brought some GoCaps kids to the stage and asked them a few questions, and asked them that question about returning to Springfield. And this is a student that said that before CAPS, they had no vision. They were leaving and they weren't coming back. But now, because they spent the semester at the E-Factory in an entrepreneurial environment where they're connected with businesses, they said, I'm still going to college somewhere else, but I'm interested in coming back because I see that vibrancy, I see how I can contribute, I can be a part of that. And they never would have had that experience if they didn't have partners working with them, and also the courage to say, we can't do it all inside the walls of our school, let's stretch it out.
I think it's interesting you say that experiences are one of the two things. Teachers, of course, we can all, if I said, remember your teachers, you can probably start naming names immediately. I sure could. But yeah, augmenting that kind of in-classroom excellence with experiences really does make a big difference.
And the teacher sort of nurtures the meaning of that experience.
They help interpret it.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Great, thank you very much.
I was making a close. I just want to thank that team. A year and a half ago, when we said, hey, we're going to develop out a plan around partnerships, I'm already thinking, I don't know. So to see where it's evolved to and how we've kind of channeled it, that has been creating some clarity. And a year from now, it may even look even a little different. So I just really want to thank both of them for their partnership and their collaboration for what we're doing for kids. Thank you for your time.
Okay, moving on to report from administration. At this time, gentlemen, we have an update for us.
Yeah, just, I think you've heard enough from our team probably tonight and engaged, but don't forget spring break next week. So we are told some parents and teachers and advisory groups in here, and teachers were excited, and parents, I think they're excited about having their kids away for a little bit. So there's this mini little break coming up next week. Really, I think the biggest thing that I could brief you on or bring up to speed is the legislative front and the work going on in Capitol. It is a really big week. You've received an email from me last week, and you get them from MSBA all the time regarding the legislative moves and the things that are happening. I got an update just before the meeting started that we do believe 634, which is the charter expansion bill, will likely be taken up on the floor of the House tomorrow. So it's a really big day. So what I would reiterate to you, if you haven't engaged with your legislator, it is the time, right? Because likely there could be a vote tomorrow. And this vote sets the tone for the session. The first one matters a lot when it comes to an education issue like this. We've engaged parents in a small fashion. We've engaged some leaders and some teacher groups, asked them to target. We ask anybody else to reach out also, make sure that our legislators know the opportunities that we think this actually will limit for our kids, right? Because we think it's a limiting factor. When you open more schools and you diminish resources, especially around unproven strategies that haven't had a lot of success. And there's been enough of that in the state board meetings lately that we've seen that, with the state board struggling with what to do with authorization of charter sponsors, as well as a report from the state auditor, I think, recently on some financing issues that were coming out regarding performance. Doesn't mean that there aren't good charter schools. There are great charter schools. There are just as many great public schools, and we outperform them on a regular basis. So we don't need to expand that to all the first-class counties across the state of Missouri without local control and equitable accountability. I think are the two things that scare us the most. We're not afraid of a competition culture, but when the rules are different for different players, that matters. And we also do believe that you were elected to represent this community, and that's a structure that's been in place for many, many years, and it's led to great success. We don't need to take it out of the school boards and bring in some board from out of state to govern potentially charters that would open up to our community without our community's input for the most part. So if you haven't engaged, it's time. I would encourage you to do that in the morning. Reach out to each of our legislators and ask for a no vote when it comes up. because it's a big day. Others, I know several of you have been, you were there last week, talking to legislators, having that conversation. We expected this actually to play out a couple of weeks ago, so we've had good success, is what I would tell you. Yeah, they've been pushing it down, right? But we've also know that they've reinforced, right? So there was an effort to bring in Jeb Bush to come and speak to legislators last week regarding the Florida strategies that played out and trying to convince them that that's the right solution for Missouri. And we'll see what the consequences of that conversation are tomorrow. But it is the time for our community to make sure that our voices are heard, and tomorrow's the weekend. That's the big one. There's lots of other bills, but that's the one that we're focused on right now tomorrow, for sure, the rest of this week.
Okay, so we'll move on to, sorry, that's legislative update, right, as well as superintendent's update. Anything else? Okay, moving on to board comments. At this time, if anyone have had any experiences, I know we've all been very busy attending various committee meetings and visits to schools and visits to legislators, but would anyone like to at this time share anything specific or any experience you've had? I think we could probably talk about that.
Hours.
Hours. But, okay, but just so that our community knows, all very busy.
Yeah. Too tired to talk about it.
During the week, we're tired, yes. Okay, so upcoming meetings, please help me if there's anything specific that you know of upcoming other than our regular meeting will be March 21st. And we do have spring break next week. We have professional development on Friday. So students will be out, the teachers will be in. Very hard. And then there's so anyway, anything else? Any other meetings? Sometimes you think that during spring break it's quiet for some, but there's many staff that will still be hard at it working that week. So, okay. Moving on to our plus deltas. There's something tonight that especially worked, or something that you want to think we can do better, improve. Please make your little notes on Post-its and stick it on our board. And so at this time, we'll move on to our 13.02, vote to go into executive session. So at this time, do I hear a motion that the board meets in executive session to discuss personnel matters as provided in section 610.021, 3 and 13 RSMO. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Melina. And second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim Rosenberry. So at this time, please vote.